7 years into what I thought was a perfect marriage, things with Julia seemed idyllic on the surface. Our beautiful home in suburban Atlanta, successful careers in tech, after meeting at that industry conference, everything looked picture perfect. But lately I noticed something odd. Julia spent hours on LinkedIn every evening, yet never talked about work anymore. She guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If this story resonates with you, hit that subscribe button and join me for more real-life experiences that might just help you avoid the pain I went through. I am Pierce, a software engineer at a growing tech company in Atlanta. My career has been on a steady upward trajectory since graduating from Georgia Tech 8 years ago. I have always been passionate about innovation spending, weekends, coding, and dreaming of launching my own startup someday. Julia and I met at the Southeast Tech Innovation Conference 5 years ago. I was representing my company at our booth, demonstrating our new security software, when she approached with thoughtful questions that impressed me. She worked for a competitor company specializing in user experience design. What started as a professional conversation quickly turned personal when we discovered our shared love for old-school arcade games and homemade pasta. Our connection was immediate and powerful. There was something about her analytical mind combined with creative vision that captivated me. After exchanging numbers, we met for coffee the next day, which turned into dinner, which turned into talking until the restaurant closed. We dated for exactly 1 year before I proposed during a camping trip to the Smoky Mountains. The wedding was small but beautiful, with close friends and family, celebrating our union under string lights at a renovated barn venue outside the city. The early years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. We would spend weekends coding together on the couch, ordering takeout, and dreaming about the tech startup we would launch together someday. Julia had innovative ideas about user interfaces that complemented my back-end expertise perfectly. We traveled to tech conferences together, inspiring each other with new concepts and possibilities. 2 years ago, we purchased our dream home in an upscale Atlanta suburb. 3 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, with the island Julia always wanted, and a dedicated office space for each of us. The backyard was perfect for the garden Julia promised to start and the workshop I planned to build. Our neighbors were mostly young, professionals like us, creating a community where we quickly felt at home. We hosted barbecues in summer and holiday parties in winter, building a social circle that made life feel complete. The first subtle changes in Julia began about 3 months ago. It started with her checking her phone more frequently during dinner, quickly turning it face down whenever I glanced her way. She changed her password without mentioning it to me. When I needed to use her phone once when mine was charging, she seemed anxious until I handed it back. I began noticing how much time Julia spent on LinkedIn. Hours would pass with her scrolling and typing on the professional networking site. At first I thought nothing of it. We both valued career growth, and networking was important in our industry. But oddly, when I asked about work or potential new opportunities, her answers became increasingly vague. "Just doing some aggressive networking," she would say with a dismissive wave. "Exploring new opportunities, you know how it is." The explanations seemed plausible, but something about her tone felt off. My unease grew when Julia started taking calls in another room or stepping outside to speak in hushed tones. Once, during our anniversary dinner at Bacchanalia, an expensive restaurant downtown that required reservations months in advance, she excused herself for an urgent call that lasted 20 minutes. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed and she avoided eye contact while mumbling something about a work emergency. I tried to rationalize these changes. The tech industry is competitive and demanding. Perhaps she was dealing with work stress or considering a major career move she was not ready to discuss. I trusted our relationship, our 7 years together, our shared dreams and goals. But the growing distance between us became impossible to ignore. Julia started dressing differently for what she called networking events. Designer outfits replaced her usual casual business attire. Her makeup became more elaborate, her perfume more expensive. She began coming home later sometimes, well after 8 or 9 in the evening, claiming extended work meetings followed by professional drinks. I made attempts to reconnect with her. I planned surprise date nights at our favorite restaurants. I suggested a weekend getaway to Savannah, where we had spent our first vacation together. I tried initiating conversations about our future, the startup we once dreamed about launching together. Her responses were lukewarm at best, distracted most of the time. She would smile, politely agree to plans, but her mind seemed elsewhere. The situation troubled me enough that I confided in my best friend James during our weekly basketball game. James had known us both since before our marriage, and had always been my sounding board for important life decisions. "Maybe it is just work stress," James suggested as we took a water break. "The market is volatile right now. Lots of layoffs and reorganizations happening everywhere." Maybe I agreed, though the knot in my stomach suggested otherwise. Around that time, Julia mentioned an old colleague named Alex, who had recently returned to Atlanta after several years working in Seattle. The name came up casually during dinner one evening. "Alex thinks the Atlanta tech scene has really evolved," she said, pushing food around her plate. "Much more competitive now, but also more opportunities." Something about the way she said the name sent a warning flare through my intuition. I tried to suppress my suspicions, telling myself I was being paranoid, that I trusted my wife completely. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and despite my best efforts, it began to grow. My attempts to communicate openly with Julia about the changes I noticed were met with increasing defensiveness. "You are being controlling," she accused one evening when I asked about her late return from a networking event. "I do not interrogate you about your work friends." A pattern emerged that I could no longer ignore. Julia would stay up late working while I went to bed alone, the cold emptiness beside me, a stark reminder of the growing distance between us. When I woke up during the night, I would find her side of the bed still empty, the faint glow of her laptop screen visible from the hallway. Julia began wearing new clothes I had never seen before. Her usual practical style gave way to designer labels and more revealing outfits. She started going to the salon more frequently, changing her hairstyle, subtly adding highlights that brought out the green in her eyes. These changes might have been flattering under different circumstances, but coupled with her emotional withdrawal, they only deepened my concern. One afternoon, while reconciling our joint credit card statement, I discovered unexplained charges at restaurants and bars. Julia had never mentioned visiting. An expensive hotel bar downtown appeared multiple times, always on evenings when Julia claimed to be at networking events. When I casually mentioned one of these places over breakfast, asking if it might be good for our next date night, she nearly choked on her coffee before quickly changing the subject. The internal conflict tore at me daily. Part of me wanted to trust my wife implicitly, to believe there was an innocent explanation for everything I was noticing. The other part screamed that something was deeply wrong, that my marriage was slipping through my fingers while I watched, paralyzed by indecision and fear. Then came the business trip that changed everything. My company needed me to fly to San Francisco for an important client meeting and subsequent training sessions. The trip was scheduled for 5 days, Monday through Friday, a longer separation than we had experienced in months. When I told Julia about the upcoming trip, her reaction struck me as odd. Instead of disappointment, I detected what seemed like relief in her expression. She immediately offered to drive me to the airport early Monday morning, something she rarely did given our home's distance from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. "I will pick you up Friday evening too," she added quickly. "Just text me your arrival time when you know it." By Wednesday afternoon in San Francisco, my suspicions had grown too strong to ignore. After a sleepless night, I made the decision to cut my trip short, skipping the final 2 days of training sessions with an excuse about a family emergency. I did not inform Julia of my change in plans, booking a return flight that would land in Atlanta Thursday afternoon instead. The flight home was agonizing my mind, cycling through various scenarios of what I might discover. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that I would return to find nothing unusual, that my suspicions were merely the product of insecurity and miscommunication. The larger part knew better. I took a rideshare from the airport directly to our home, arriving around 5:30 in the evening. The house was empty, Julia's car gone from the driveway. According to her usual schedule, she should have been home from work by now, especially on a Thursday when her company had early closing hours. With shaking hands, I set down my luggage in the entryway. The house felt different somehow, as if the very walls were keeping secrets from me. I walked through each room looking for, I do not know what exactly. There were no obvious signs of anything amiss. No strange personal items, no evidence of another person having been there. I went to our shared home office where we kept our desktop computer. It was in sleep mode, and when I moved the mouse, the screen illuminated to reveal LinkedIn still open in the browser. But it was not the main feed visible on screen. Instead, it was the direct messaging interface. And there, in an active conversation thread with a contact named Alexander James, were messages that stopped my heart. The exchanges were unmistakably flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and subtle references to shared experiences. As I scrolled up through months of messages, the nature of their relationship became painfully clear. They had reconnected when Alex returned to Atlanta 3 months ago initially for coffee to catch up, then drinks, then dinners. The messages revealed that Alex was not just any former colleague, but Julia's ex-boyfriend, from before we met someone she had dated seriously in college. I read about their regular meetings during Julia's supposed networking events, their late work sessions that were anything but professional. The messages contained details about their physical relationship that felt like daggers to my chest. They discussed how they would coordinate their stories, what excuses Julia would give me for her absences. What hit me hardest was discovering their plans for that very evening. They had arranged to meet at the rooftop at the Hotel Claremont, an upscale bar with a view of the city at 7:30. Julia had told me she would be at a professional women in tech mixer. The physical pain of betrayal was unlike anything I had experienced before. My chest constricted, making it difficult to breathe. My vision blurred, whether from shock or unshed tears I could not tell. The foundation of trust I had built my life upon crumbled beneath me, leaving me suspended in freefall. After the initial shock subsided, a strange clarity emerged. I decided to wait up and confront Julia directly, rather than let the deception continue. I would not allow myself to be made a fool of any longer. If our marriage was to have any chance of survival, it would require complete honesty from this point forward. I closed the browser, ensuring I left no digital trace of my discovery. Then I moved to the living room to wait. I did not turn on any lights as evening turned to night, preferring to sit in darkness with my thoughts and the shattered remains of my trust. The agonizing hours of waiting felt like days. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would maintain my composure despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. I was determined to confront this situation with dignity, to not allow anger alone to guide my words or actions. Whatever happened next, I wanted to look back, knowing I had handled myself with integrity. At 12:45 in the morning, I heard the sound of Julia's key in the front door. I remained seated in the darkened living room, waiting as she entered, watching her silhouette move through the entryway. She was dressed elegantly in a black dress I had never seen before, her hair styled in loose waves. Even from across the room I could smell the mix of alcohol and an unfamiliar cologne clinging to her. I reached over and turned on the lamp beside my chair. The sudden light made Julia jump, her hand flying to her chest in surprise. "Pierce. Oh my God, you scared me," she exclaimed quickly, regaining composure. Then realization dawned on her face. "Wait, you are supposed to be in San Francisco. What are you doing home?" "I came back early," I said, my voice calm, despite the storm inside me. "Where have you been, Julia?" "The women in tech mixer ran late." "Lots of great connections," she answered too quickly, setting down her purse and avoiding my gaze. "Why did not you tell me you were coming back early?" "Because I wanted to see where you really spend your evenings when I am not here," I replied, maintaining the same even tone. "I know about Alex." The color drained from her face. For a moment she stood frozen, then quickly shifted to defensive anger. "What are you talking about? Alex is just an old colleague." "Are you spying on me now? I saw the messages, Julia. All of them. On LinkedIn. Your affair has been going on for 3 months." She tried denial first, claiming I had misunderstood professional messages. When I recited specific details from their conversations, she switched tactics, anger flaring. "You had no right to go through my private messages." "They were open on our shared computer," I countered. "But that is beside the point. You have been lying to me for months, sneaking around with your ex-boyfriend while I trusted you completely." Julia's expression cycled through several emotions: shock, anger, grief, shame, and finally a twisted attempt at justification. "It is just harmless flirting," she claimed, though we both knew that was a lie. "And maybe if you were not always so focused on your work, so emotionally unavailable, I would not have needed to seek connection elsewhere." The hypocrisy was staggering. I had been the one trying to maintain our connection while she pulled away. I had planned dates. She half-heartedly attended. Suggested trips. She found excuses to postpone attempted conversations she diverted. "That is not what happened, and you know it," I said, my voice cracking slightly, despite my efforts to remain steady. I have been right here trying to understand what was happening between us. You were the one creating distance while you rebuilt a relationship with Alex behind my back. We went back and forth, her justifications growing weaker, my resolve stronger. Finally, after a particularly desperate attempt to shift blame to my work hours, I decided to cut through the circular argument. I need complete honesty from this point forward, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. Password or divorce? Your choice right now. Full transparency, or we end this marriage. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I watched her calculate, weighing her options, perhaps considering what other evidence of her infidelity might exist on her device. After what felt like an eternity, Julia made her choice. Without a word, she pulled out her phone, pressed the lock button, and set it face down on the coffee table. Then she turned and walked toward our bedroom. The finality of that action answered everything. She had chosen Alex. She had chosen deception. She had chosen to end our 7 years together rather than come clean and work to rebuild trust. I spent the night on the living room couch, cycling through waves of grief, anger, and eventually a strange sense of clarity. Sleep eluded me entirely. By dawn, I had moved through the initial shock and into a space of determined action. Our marriage had not been real for months. What I thought we shared had been a facade maintained by my willingness to ignore warning signs out of love and trust. As I sat watching the first light of morning filter through the blinds, I mentally cataloged all the moments I had dismissed my intuition. The late-night work sessions, the sudden password changes, the defensive reactions to innocent questions, the new clothes and hairstyles not meant for my appreciation, the unexplained expenses, the gradual withdrawal from our shared dreams and plans, all signs pointing to a truth I had refused to see. In that moment of painful clarity, I made my decision. I would not beg someone to love me who had actively chosen to betray me. I would not fight to save a marriage my wife had already abandoned. I would maintain my dignity and take decisive action. Moving quietly, I packed essential belongings into 2 suitcases. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, the external hard drive, containing my personal projects and photographs. I carefully selected items that were unquestionably mine, avoiding anything that might lead to disputes later. From my nightstand drawer, I retrieved the business card of a divorce attorney. A colleague had recommended months ago when his brother went through a difficult separation. At the time, I had taken it out of politeness, never imagining I would need it. At 5:15 in the morning, I called the 24-hour legal hotline listed on the card. The attorney on call provided clear initial guidance about protecting myself financially and emotionally. First step, document everything. Second, secure personal finances. Third, find temporary housing. Fourth, file papers quickly to establish intent and timeline. By 6:30, as Julia still slept in our bedroom, I quietly loaded my car. I took one last look at our home, the place where I had expected to build a lifetime of memories. Now it felt like a beautiful shell housing years of deception. I closed the door silently behind me, my wedding ring left on the kitchen counter beside a handwritten note with just 3 words, lawyer contact information. I checked into an extended stay hotel that morning, a clean but soulless place that matched my emotional state. Within 3 days, I had secured a furnished temporary apartment in a different part of the city, far from our shared social circles. The apartment was minimal and anonymous, but it was a space untouched by betrayal, and lies a blank canvas where I could begin rebuilding. My first meeting with the divorce attorney, Bradford Willis, was the following Monday morning. He was straightforward and experienced, outlining the process ahead, with clarity that helped anchor me during an otherwise turbulent time. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, he explained in his corner office downtown. We will need full financial disclosure from both parties. Given the circumstances and duration of your marriage, this should be relatively straightforward, provided there is no significant dispute over assets. I followed his advice, meticulously documenting everything, changing passwords on all personal accounts, and redirecting my direct deposit to a new individual bank account. I contacted our financial institutions to freeze joint credit accounts and establish clear records of assets prior to separation. I even recorded a detailed timeline of Julia's affair based on the LinkedIn messages I had seen, with dates and locations that matched her unexplained absences and credit card charges. 10 days after leaving our home, I returned during working hours when I knew Julia would be at her office. Using my key, I entered the silent house. It felt strange being there as a visitor rather than a resident. I placed the divorce papers Bradford had prepared on the kitchen table, positioned precisely in the center, where they would be impossible to miss. They outlined my proposed terms for division of assets, which Bradford had assured me were more than fair given the circumstances. As expected, Julia's response came swiftly and chaotically. Within hours of discovering the papers and my formal exit from our home, my phone exploded with notifications. First came angry texts, accusing me of cowardice for not facing her directly. These quickly gave way to tearful voicemails pleading for conversation for a chance to explain for forgiveness. When these went unanswered, she oscillated between threats about fighting me for everything, and promises to end things with Alex if I would just come home. Following Bradford's advice and my own instinct for self-preservation, I maintained minimal contact, responding only through proper legal channels. Though emotionally difficult, this boundary was necessary for my healing and for the clean resolution of our marriage. Each message I did not answer strengthened my resolve. Each deleted voicemail affirmed my decision. This is common, Bradford assured me during our second meeting. The party at fault often cycles through anger, negotiation, and pleading. Stay the course. Communicate only through me, unless absolutely necessary. As the divorce proceedings continued, more lies unraveled. Through the discovery process, I learned that Julia and Alex had discussed their plan extensively. They had intended to continue their affair until Alex secured a promised promotion that would put him financially in a position to support them both. They had even researched apartments in Midtown where they planned to move once both their marriages ended. Yes, Alex was married too. His wife Laura reached out to me once she discovered the affair about a month into our separate divorce proceedings. We met once for coffee, two strangers connected by the same betrayal, sharing information that helped complete the puzzle for both of us. Laura had found hotel receipts and confronted Alex directly, leading to his immediate confession. Unlike me, she was considering reconciliation after his promises to attend couples counseling. I wished her well, but knew that path was not for me. The initial weeks after discovery were the darkest. I struggled to focus at work, nearly missing deadlines on a major project my team had been developing for months. My usual sharp problem-solving skills were dulled by constant intrusive thoughts about Julia and Alex together, about what I could have done differently, about whether our entire relationship had been built on shifting sand. My supervisor Tom noticed the change. Rather than reprimanding me for my slipping performance, he invited me to lunch at a quiet restaurant away from our workplace. Family issues, he asked simply after we had ordered. I nodded, not ready to share details, but grateful for the understanding. Take the time you need, he said. We can redistribute some of your workload temporarily. Your track record has earned you that flexibility. This unexpected support became a pattern as I slowly shared my situation with a few trusted friends and colleagues. James organized weekend hiking trips to keep me active and outdoors. My sister flew in from Colorado for a week, filling my refrigerator with home-cooked meals and providing companionship during the longest evenings. Even Julia's younger sister Megan reached out apologizing for her sister's behavior and making clear that not everyone in her family condoned what she had done. Therapy became an essential part of my healing journey. Dr. Kaplan, a specialist in relationship trauma, helped me navigate the anger and grief that threatened to consume me during those first months. She introduced techniques for managing intrusive thoughts and guided me through examining relationship patterns without falling into self-blame. The choice to betray was hers alone. Dr. Kaplan reminded me during our sessions. You can examine what might have been missing in the relationship, but her decision to lie rather than communicate was not your responsibility. 3 months after leaving our home, I found myself fully immersed in a challenging new project at work. The problem-solving demands forced my brain to focus on something other than my failed marriage. I developed an innovative solution to a security issue that had plagued our platform for months, earning recognition from senior leadership and restoring my professional confidence. 6 months later, I received an unexpected promotion to lead security engineer with a substantial salary increase and the opportunity to build my own team. For the first time since discovering Julia's betrayal, I felt genuine pride and optimism about my future. The promotion allowed me to move from my temporary apartment to a modern condo in an up-and-coming neighborhood, a place that felt truly mine, with no memories of Julia attached to any corner. As my personal recovery progressed, I cautiously began dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee or dinner with interesting, intelligent women I met through friends or professional networks. Each interaction helped rebuild my confidence in my ability to connect with others, to trust my judgment about character and intention. I approached these new relationships with both wisdom about relationship red flags and openness to genuine connection. 8 months after filing for divorce, I encountered Julia and Alex at a restaurant across town. They were seated at a corner table, engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation. Our eyes met briefly across the room, and for a moment I waited for the familiar pain to surface. Instead, I felt an unexpected emotion, pity. They looked unhappy, burdened perhaps, by the knowledge that their relationship was built on mutual deception. I nodded politely and turned back to my dinner companion, realizing that the encounter had not derailed my evening or my emotional state. Progress at last. The divorce was finalized exactly 10 months after I discovered the affair. The legal document arrived by certified mail on a bright spring morning. As I signed for the envelope, I realized its contents no longer held power over my emotions. The final division of assets was fair, the separation of our lives complete. I was free to move forward without legal or emotional entanglement. Looking back now, I can see how that painful experience forced me to grow in ways I might otherwise have avoided. I learned to trust my instincts rather than dismiss them in favor of comfortable illusions. I discovered my capacity for decisive action even when emotionally devastated. I built new friendships and strengthened existing ones through vulnerability and authenticity. Most importantly, I learned that maintaining your dignity and self-respect through betrayal is not just possible but essential. By refusing to engage in her drama or lower myself to tactics of revenge, I preserved the best parts of myself through the worst experience of my life. I now approach relationships with both greater caution and greater clarity about what matters: honesty, direct communication, and mutual respect. I know the warning signs of deception and the value of transparency. And while I cannot guarantee I will never be hurt again, I can promise myself that I will never again ignore my intuition when it signals that something is wrong. Have you ever had that gut feeling about a relationship that you ignored? What happened when you finally listened to your intuition? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize warning signs in your own relationship, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing these life lessons with others who might be going through similar struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most meaningful beginnings.